Hello, Blitz fans of all ages, it's me, Plumcastle here, and this is the T1 Heavy, arguably one of the strongest tanks in Tier 5, and it is a very popular choice for people trying to seal club the tier. Now, there are a few things that make the tank very, very strong, the first of which would be its armor, because if you take a look here, you can see that for the most part, it is quite red. Now, you do have that lower plate that you do need to be aware of, because it can be easily penetrated even by Tier 4 tanks, but when you play this tank correctly, it can be very hard for the enemy to actually even see this, because there are a few ways that we can very effectively hide this. The first way is with side scraping, because as you might be able to see here, you have a ridiculous amount of armor when it comes to side scraping, even exceeding 200 millimeters effective when you angle this thing up really good. So you can see it is very effective for side scraping, particularly against lower tier vehicles, but still somewhat effective even against tier 6 vehicles. Now, you also have some nice gun depression sitting at 10, so you can definitely work some hold down positions, especially with your thick turret armor and upper plate armor. It can be very difficult, again, for tier 4s and 5s to penetrate you. Now, the moment that the enemy loads APCR or is running a tier 6, again, even if they're running APCR, the armor becomes a lot less impressive. You can see here there are some spots on the upper plate that can be penetrated, as well that little corner that you can see there when side scraping can be penetrated, so it makes it a little bit less effective when side scraping if someone knows how to do that, because then they can shoot you before you've even got your gun out from behind the wall. And as well, you can technically penetrate this in the mantlet, so it is not a perfect steel wall, but generally when running against tier 5s and 4s and sometimes even 6s, a lot of players don't really understand APCR at that point, so it's not always a guarantee that someone's going to know how to do this, but just keep in mind you are not a perfect steel wall, and just be aware that you are not absolutely impenetrable. Now, moving on to the other statistics, I would say another really good thing for this tank is its forward speed at 34. That might not sound super fast, but given that you're in tier 5 and the maps are smaller, it's actually not too bad. You can definitely get around, and considering that for the most part you want to play this tank, you want to get into a good position and you want to hold it, you don't really want to move around too much, it's actually quite effective in my opinion. And as well, you also have a nice weight of 59 tons, making it so that if you do ram an unfortunate low tier tank, you can expect to deal somewhere from around, I'd say 50 to maybe a little over 100 for a pretty decent ram, which, while that may not sound like a lot, considering the fact that again it's lower tiers, that's actually quite a bit and can sometimes rip away sometimes up to a fifth of the enemy's hit points. So yeah, definitely very effective when it comes to a good, solid ram. Now, of course, no tank is perfect, and this is no exception, because the AP rounds are a little bit lacking, I would say. Your damage per minute is sitting at a mediocre 1,353. That ranks you 6 out of 9 when it comes to tier 5 heavy, so it's not the greatest by any means. Your penetration is also pretty lousy at 128. So again, you can penetrate tier 5s for the most part in tier 4s fairly easily, but go against tier 6s and you basically have to resort to premium rounds, especially when it is a tier 6 heavy. Your damage is 160, which is kind of middle range, I would say. You do have some nice shell velocity for AP rounds at 792, so it's not perfectly terrible. But if you look at the dispersion, or if you were to look at the dispersion, you'd find that it was kind of lousy. It has a dispersion of 0.412, which is absolutely terrible. Fun fact, that is actually worse, even if just slightly, than the KV2's dispersion. The KV2, I want to say, has about 0.407 or something like that, and this is a few points higher than that. So yeah, the accuracy is very, very bad. Now, to counter that, you do have a good aim time of about 2.21 base, which you can then get a little bit better if you run I think it's calibrated or something. So yeah, the aim time can get better. And I'm sorry, it's not calibrated. It is the enhanced vertical stabilizer and the enhanced gun laying drive to get those better numbers. But still, the base aim time is already pretty decent. Now, your reload is about 7 seconds base, so again, kind of middle of the road. The gun overall is just either mediocre or kind of troll, is what I find. In the penetration, when you consider the fact that you're inaccurate and your penetration kind of stinks, it can make it a little bit annoying when trying to hit some faraway shots. It's, again, more effective, closer range. Now, the APCR rounds on this thing are actually a little bit better, particularly when it comes to the penetration, because then your penetration boosts up to 177, which is actually very nice and very usable. However, your damage per minute drops to a measly 1,142 damage per minute, which is kind of lousy again. And of course, you do have nice shell velocity again, but again, as you know with some of those other statistics, it still can be a little bit meh at times. So really, when it comes to AP rounds, you want to shoot those at tier 5s when you can, and of course tier 4s. And then if you're running against a tier 6, particularly a tier 6 heavy tank, definitely go ahead and go to APCR, because that's basically the only thing that will penetrate those things. And HE, the penetration's kind of low, so you don't really need to worry about it too much. Now let's look at the actual gameplay. You can see here we are loaded up on, I believe this is Normandy, and you can see there the enemy team is being quite aggressive in this one. I saw right away that that guy was going to YOLO, so I pulled back to give him a little bit of room so he didn't hit me, and then me and my team in turn farm him out. Same with this SU. I had no idea what was going on with this enemy team in this game. You can see literally every single one of them, with the exception of maybe the ARL and the Hellcat, have YOLO'd down into us, leaving us very comfortably farming them out. And you can see they aren't even focused on me for some reason, and that enemy tank is just going to get absolutely wrecked. And there goes the SU-100. He's going to get hit by my team, and then I'm going to in turn take him out. And there we go. We got a weird HE bounce from that enemy. I'm not sure why he was shooting HE. Funny enough, that is something that I, again, see a lot more in lower tiers. I see people not understanding what HE does, and then they just splash me, or sometimes just don't do any damage to me at all. And then we go up to move in to take out the ARL-44 and the Hellcat. Now, I will say, again, this tank is very, very OP when it comes to same and lower tier tanks. However, when it comes to tier 6 gameplay, with the exception of this game, of course, it can be a bit, it's not fantastic. Again, your armor and even your hit points at just 700 can get eaten through pretty quick by tier 6 tanks. So overall, when it comes to a tier 6 game, you are definitely going to want to play a little bit more laid back than you might if you were in a tier 4 game, for example. But still, in general, the tank is just very strong, but don't overestimate it, because it still has some vulnerabilities, like I said. Now we're going to move on to a match on mines. Again, a very small map, unlike Normandy, so we can actually move into the hold down position at the top of the hill here, again, fairly quickly because of our speed, and we're actually going to be able to do some nice damage to the enemy, because again, tier 4s, this isn't a tier 4 match, sorry, but tier 5s and sometimes even 6s can still not be too difficult to clear if you are running the tank properly and if no one's really focusing on you. But still, again, don't be a YOLOer. Don't just YOLO everything in sight. You can see I am using this hold down position. I'm not really needing to utilize all of my gun depression, which is nice, so I'm just showing my turret, and you can see there that Matilda does bounce me, and I can't remember if I hit the shot or not. I do, kind of funny, but you can see there that is one of the few cases that the dispersion actually works in your favor. For the most part, it's pretty inaccurate, and I get trolled by the gun all the time. Now, this is going to end up being a class 1 game, and I will tell you, it took me like 46, I think it was 46, yeah, like 46 games to get one class 1 that I thought was kind of decent to show you guys, and that's nuts. I mean, the tank in general, I would say, actually has a very boring gameplay. It's very good. Like yesterday, I played 31 games, I think, had an over 90% win rate. That is nuts, and I honestly was lagging and not even playing that tremendously well, and only half of those were in platoon with other people. So yes, the tank is very, very solid and is just a win rate farm. However, the gameplay perspective, it's kind of boring, and it took me forever to get replays that I thought were entertaining enough to actually show. I did thankfully get a few of them though, and this is one of them. So yeah, just in general, if you are planning to Steel Club this tank, do realize that it's going to be quite laborious and boring if you play too much of it, as I once did when I got over 1,000 battles in this sucker. But anyway, there is the Cryos in the back, which I'm pushing up onto. My team is going to clear out the flank. Now again, I have to be careful with this Cryos because he's going to, he does have a lot of armor and gun depression and damage per minute, so I do again need to be careful. And you can see there was an example of one of my little laggy bits there. But anyway, the M6 on my team gets cleared out, and then from here to basically the end of the replay, it's just a bounce fest between me and this Cryos. He does penetrate more of his shots than I do, I would say, but thankfully I do not overexpose myself too much, because again, he just has an absolutely ludicrous amount of damage per minute, and I don't want to just push too aggressively. So again, I do need to be careful, and that's really how the T1 heavy goes. When you're in a tier 6 game, just be careful not to overdo it. Same with tier 5 and 4, though tier 5 and 4 you can definitely be a bit more aggressive. And tier 5 and 4 are definitely when this tank shines the most. It's when I get the most damage for the most part. And it's, of course, the easiest because a lot of players, again, don't know what they're doing. But still, this tank should never be overestimated by you as the driver, nor as the enemy going against you, because it can, as you can see from these replays, and even if you were to watch some of the games that I did offline, it's a very solid tank that should not be underestimated, no matter whether you're driving it or whether you're playing it or going against it. So yeah, that is the T1 Heavy. Very, very strong tier 5 tank that occasionally trolls you with its gun. But anyway, there you have it. That is my review. I plan to follow this up with a M6 review, which will hopefully coming out shortly. But anyway, there's the T1 Heavy. And so with that, I hope you all enjoyed, and as always, have fun, good luck, and happy tanking.